Good morning. Welcome to week 3 of Organizational Behavior, graduate study course in the MBA program. Got a couple of chapters that we'll be looking over today, and then I've got a couple of videos that I'll have posted for you in addition to my weekly video post. One's from Simon Sinek on millennials in the workplace. We're going to be talking about personality and values and decision making, and it's a really interesting video that thought you might get some benefit out of. And another one is a little longer and it's a little dry, but I hope you'll take a look at it at your leisure. It's about a 30-minute video, but it's from McKinsey Consultants and talking about organizations and organizational behavior and the post-pandemic reality that we're going to face. So trying to really keep some stuff out there in terms of not only learning about organizational behavior and theory and recent practice, but I also want to be looking ahead a little bit away in a way to also get us a forward look at what organizations and organizational behavior will look like post-pandemic. Okay, so we're going to do chapter 5 and chapter 6 today, and once again, I don't go through all of the slides on these. I just kind of do some highlighting some of the things that I want to talk about. So chapter 5 is on personality and values. Personality is the sum total of ways in which an individual reacts to and interacts with others. And as most of us know who have worked in any type of environments, or even if we've gone to school for whether it be from middle school to high school to college, we all understand there are numerous personalities and numerous type of people out there. And so it takes a very adaptable individual, also almost a chameleon, to be able to mold and meld yourself around to be able to work with all of these different types of folks in an organization, any type of organization. Assessing and measuring personality. Personality tests are useful in hiring decisions, help managers forecast who's best for a job. There are a number of companies, particularly federal agencies, things like that, and also a lot of bigger companies that test people with standardized personality tests. Myers-Briggs is one that is a really big one that's very useful. That kind of helps organization just in seeing what types of different skill sets and personalities are dominant in an individual and their natural tendencies. Personality determinants can be heredity and environment. Heredity is probably the most dominant factor. What type of environment were you brought up in? Environmental factors do have a great deal of influence as well, though. So many times your home environment, the types of people that you're brought up around can have a huge impact on your personality as you go through life. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't act upon those natural personality traits. It doesn't mean that you can't change them, but those are kind of your default. And so it takes a lot to move the needle. If you really want to change, if you don't like what you see in the mirror, you don't like your personality that you see, there's possibilities to change it, but it takes a lot of movement and backfilling and movement and backfilling. And it's usually a constant process. And we also have to watch our personalities can kind of rear their ugly heads again if we don't watch what we're doing as well. So one of the things that I did want to highlight is the Myers-Briggs type indicator. There are probably some opportunities and maybe some classes within the Newman University that you may have taken this type of indicator. You might have taken it in the organizations that you're at. It kind of gives you a really good feeling for your classification, what kind of box you fit in. Are you extroverted or introverted, sensing or intuitive, those type of things. the big 5 traits of organizational behavior are emotional stability, extroversion, openness, agreeableness, and conscientiousness. Now, again, I talked about you can move the needle on some of these things, but some of them are pretty inherent. Your emotional stability. You can gain on that front, but whatever your platform is and your foundation is in your life, it's really easy to keep falling back to that foundation as you go through life. So it takes a lot of work. Whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, again, you can stretch out, you can spread your wings, but I've probably more of an introvert in terms of what I started out in my life. I've spread my wings through the years. I've put myself in many, many situations where it forced me to kind of get out there. And so many people would probably mistake me for more of an extrovert, but I do still have those introvert tendencies. And openness, some people keep their cards pretty close to their vest, and other people, what you see is what you get. And agreeableness, some people just need to be liked. And I will tell you that when I ran my company, this was a challenge of mine. I'm really strong on the scale of agreeableness and conscientiousness. And so being the CEO of a company with 150 employees and 100+ million in sales and 7 locations and all the stresses and strains that went with that, and the tough calls that you had to make at times, it really put a lot of stress and strain on the system for me, just because it wasn't natural for me. And so I felt like as my career progressed, I got much better at being a chameleon and kind of adapting myself to the situation at hand. But I still had those foundational elements in me that made me conflicted at times. And sometimes that's not the healthiest place to be. And I know I struggled at times with that somewhat, just the pressures and the stresses and strains that I would feel that most people never knew that I was dealing with. The dark triad, Machiavellianism, high Macs tend to be pragmatic, emotionally distant, and believe the ends justify the means. Narcissism, person of grandiose view of self, and psychopaths, lack of concern for others and lack of guilt or remorse when their actions cause harm. Again, there are situations, if you see somebody that's a fixer that's going to come into an organization when it's in trouble and just do what it takes to get things done, and they're going to probably be there for a short time, try to get the company fixed and in shape, and then they'll be on down the road again. Well, those type of individuals probably have some elements of all of those dark triads tendencies. And so it's not that there's absolutely not a place for them, but they definitely pose challenges as we kind of see in our current environment. Other personality traits relevant to organizational behavior, core self-evaluation. People with positive core self-evaluation like themselves, see themselves as capable and effective in the workplace. Self-monitoring, adjust behavior to meet external situations, and proactive personality, shows initiative, takes action, and perseveres. One of the things in terms of core self-evaluation and self-monitoring, I always tell my students, and I believe this to my core, that if you can look in a mirror and see an accurate reflection of what the rest of the world sees, you're ahead of the game to the tune of about ahead of 90% of the population. Very few people can really see an accurate reflection of what the rest of the world sees. And if you don't believe me when I say that, think about why managers hate doing evaluations. It's because many times well over 50% of the people, if not over 70% of the people, see themselves in the top 10% of performers. And that's gotten into grade creep, and I think it's going to get worse and worse and worse as we have the generations that come in behind that are used to getting trophies. Everybody gets a trophy generation. So it's just being able to evaluate yourself, being able to see your strengths, your weaknesses, and somewhat objectively evaluate those things, is part of self-improvement. If you can't do those types of things, it's going to be very difficult for you to grow as you go through your life. Situation strength theory, the way personality translates into behavior depends on the strength of the situation. That could be the clarity, the consistency, the constraints, and the consequences. Being able to, I call it situational leadership, situational decision making, being able to adapt yourself to the situation, almost being able to be a chameleon at times when needed. Values represent basic enduring convictions, that is specific mode of conduct or end state of existence, personally or socially preferable to opposite and converse mode of conduct or end state of existence. So what's your values in an organization, what's your values personally, and then the person and organization fit. It's more important that employees' personalities fit with the organizational culture and with the characteristics of any specific job. So having that conflict, if your personality and your values don't fit with the culture, can be a very unhealthy and unsustainable situation. Hofstede's framework for assessing cultures, there's 5 big factors: power distance, individualism versus collectivism, masculinity versus femininity, uncertainty avoidance, and long-term versus short-term orientation. And that is it for chapter 5. Let's see if I can put this down and I will find the next one. Share my screen again. Okay. All right. Chapter 6 is what we'll go to next. And I figured out how to work everything. Okay. Chapter 6, perception and individual decision making. Perception is a process by which individuals organize and interpret their sensory impressions in order to give meaning to their environment. Factors that influence perception, the situation, the perceiver, and the target. I've always had a saying, and I had it with my company and with my employees, perception in many ways is reality. And fighting perception is in some ways like fighting a ghost. It can be very challenging and very difficult to do that. And so you always have to be aware of what people's perceptions are. And once people perceive things a certain way, they tend to get fixed, and many times it's hard to change those perceptions as you go. Attribution theory suggests that perceivers try to attribute the observed behavior in a type to a type of cause, either internal or external. Fundamental attribution error, the tendency to underestimate the influence of external factors and overestimate that of internal factors. So when we look at our lives and our success, many times we underestimate the influence of external factors, and we think most of our success is based on what we have done internal. Let's take somebody that grew up in a upper class atmosphere, went to the best schools, had the best opportunities at every level, great networks, all of that type of stuff, but they're a bit of a narcissist, and they think everything they've done is because of their own internal factors, what they've done themselves. Now, that can be 50-50, that can be part and parcel, obviously, but many times the advantages you've had. Now you can have it on the other side of the fence too, where you've had somebody that's come from very unstable, very poor circumstances, and they've been able to make an extreme success out of themselves. Well, it kind of flips both ways. Self-serving bias occurs when individuals overestimate their own internal influence of success and underestimate the external influence on their or overestimate the external influences on their failures. So we have a lot of that out there right now, a lot of that going on, and hopefully, again, being able to see what people see in the mirror and have an accurate reflection of ourselves, hopefully we're able to minimize that as much as possible. Selective perception, perceptual filtering process based on interests, background, and attitude. These are some of the shortcuts that we use in judging others. Halo effect, contrast effects, our reaction is influenced by others we have recently encountered. And then stereotyping, judging someone on the basis of the perception of the group to which they belong. Now, these shortcuts that we use in judging others, they're not all bad. We are bombarded with information every day. And so and especially in our current day and age with social networks, with computers, with technology, we're never far away from our phones. So biases and shortcuts and that we use in judging others, these are tools just like anything else that we use to help cut through the bombardment of information that we have on a daily basis. So biases and shortcuts are not bad. It's how we use those tools that is the problem. So understand halo effects, stereotyping, things like that, biases, these aren't necessarily in and of themselves evil or horrible. It's how we use those tools that generally gets us into trouble. The link between perception and decision making. Decision making occurs as a reaction to a perceived problem. Rational decision making model. And as it notes below, we rarely go through all of these steps, especially when we're making routine everyday decisions. But when we go through and we're going to make big decisions, impactful decisions, this is a model that is not bad to go through and make sure that you check all the boxes. It's a fairly intuitive process, and so we do this. If we're at the grocery store, for example, we're doing this constantly, right? And so we normally almost intuitively go through this process, but when we get big decisions and we get a lot on the line, it's not a bad thing to formally go through a checklist of these things to make sure that we're covering all of our bases and not shortchanging the process. Bounded rationality, the limited information processing capability of human beings makes it impossible to assimilate and understand all of the information necessary to optimize. Bounded rationality is constructing simplified models that extract the essential features from problems without capturing all of their complexities. And usually when we go through that process, we're going to use satisficing. We're going to find the best solution, the best and most convenient solution, instead of maybe going through a laborious process on every front. Intuitive decision-making, a non-conscious process created out of a distilled experience. This increases with experience and it can be a powerful complement to rational analysis. So have you ever heard the term gut feeling? That's what we're talking about. You have a gut feeling about something. Well, that's your intuition. That's the breadth of all of your experiences kicking in and just telling you internally that this is probably the best way to go. And some people use that more than even rational decision making. Some people use that successfully even more than rational decision making, but most of us probably can't get away with that. Common biases and errors that we possess and we exhibit: overconfidence, anchoring, and confirmation bias, seeking out information that reaffirms our past choices and discounting information that contradicts it. This is all over the place right now in terms of we all watch the same networks, we watch the same news networks, we might be MSNBC or might be Fox News, but these are confirmation bias networks. Anchoring bias, a tendency to fixate on initial information, fail to adequately adjust or subsequent information. Again, in politics, we exhibit this all over the place. And availability bias, basing judgments on readily available information. And many of us are guilty of that at times. Individual differences on decision making, personality, gender, general mental ability, cultural differences, and nudging. Gender is a big one. Men and women many times approach problems a little differently and make decisions in a different manner. General mental ability, just depending on the experiences and the education that you have, can play into it a lot. And then cultural differences. You're seeing a big thing on vaccines right now where you're seeing, and I had not thought about this as much before, but it gives you pause. But if you look historically, there have been some real historical and deadly shenanigans that have been done with minority populations in terms of trying out vaccines, trying out medicines, using them as unknown guinea pigs on things. And so from a cultural perspective, there are parts of the minority community that are very skittish about trying new vaccines. And that's why they're saying this may weigh against them taking the plunge with coronavirus vaccines. Ethical frameworks for decision making, utilitarianism, which provides the greatest good for the greatest number. Rights makes decisions consistent with fundamental liberties and privileges. And justice, impose and enforce rules fairly and impartially so that there is equal distribution of benefits and costs. So obviously, the rights and justice are fundamental to our Constitution and fundamental to our legal structures. Utilitarianism is something that we kind of practice more culturally and individually based on our religions, based on our cultural upbringing, more than anything. Creativity, the ability to produce novel and useful ideas, helps people see problems others can't, better understand things, identify alternatives, and identify alternatives that aren't readily apparent. Causes of creative behavior, intelligence, personality, expertise, ethics. You know, one that I don't think is really either on there, probably is under expertise maybe, but I would put experience as well. If you look at people that have traveled the world, if you look at people that have done several different jobs, if you look at people that got certain types of degrees in school versus certain other ones, all of those things can lead to creative temperament. And then another cause of creative behavior can be heredity. If you've got a mother that was a concert pianist and a father that was a comedian professionally, both of them, you're probably going to have a creative temperament that others may not if they had accountants and say a doctor for parents. So some of this can be hereditary as well. Okay, I think that will get us for these chapters. Again, I've got a couple of good videos that you can check out as your time allows. I would encourage you to watch both of them. They're both very interesting. And we are in the third week of this semester. We're in week 11 of the overall semester. So we're getting close to our end of our on-time campus. We've got 3.5 weeks left, and that's exciting because it looks like we're going to be able to get through on campus for this semester, which is great to see us be able to accomplish that. And you know, if you want to look at something from an organizational behavior standpoint, I would point to Newman University. I really would. I've been very impressed with this university and the way they've managed this coronavirus. They've been very, very proactive. They've been very, very disciplined. They drew the lines in the sand early on about mask wearing and hand washing and safety, and anybody that didn't toe that line or anybody that didn't work with the plan was going to hear about it. And this organization, I think, has just done an incredible job in helping us get through this. And I'm hoping that we are able to get through this last 3.5 weeks, knock on wood, and hopefully after a 2-month break, we're able to come back and replay and do that again next semester. I will tell you that if Newman just being able to get through this fall semester sets them in a pretty elite group of schools. And if we were able to get through this entire year on campus, we would be in the elite of the elite. And so that's a lot to be proud of from an organizational standpoint, from students in the organization, professors and staff. We've all done our part, and we're all to be commended for that. So anyway, stay safe, and we'll look forward to talking to everyone next week, and look forward to answering any questions, or if you need anything from me, don't hesitate to reach out. All right. Thank you all.